Hi everyone. Wanted to wish everyone a Gemara Chasima Tova, and also wanted to just update that there was no Spain series episode last week, and I forgot to go on the podcast to make mention of this. That's because it's so close to Yom Tif, people are busy, and I don't think it makes sense to release 2 episodes a week. You can email me if you disagree, but I don't think so. And this episode also is going out on a Monday morning. It's also Aseret Mechuvah. It's a busy week, so I think I'm going to skip this week, and the next week also. It's another short week, so next week, next week may be just a Spain episode or just a regular. I haven't decided that yet. So there might be one next week, but that would be the only episode. There's not going to be 2 episodes a week till after Sukkot. So I just wanted to update about that. This episode is another tefillah. A friend of mine who listens sent me a message about this saying how there's been a couple on tefillah recently and he's been enjoying it. So I hope listeners are as well. It's kind of inadvertent. It wasn't planned, but this is another one here on tefillah related to Aseret Mechuvah, Yom Kippur. So enjoy this episode. And as always, if you'd like to sponsor an episode of the podcast, that's $360. Or if you want to give any amount less than that, you can do so via PayPal. The link is in the show's notes, or Zelle, Chase QuickPay, svarmchat@gmail.com. Additionally, subscribe where you get your podcast: Apple, Spotify, 24/6, Google Podcasts, etc. And if you can rate it and review it on Apple. And enjoy the episode, and Gemara Chasima Tova to all. Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Sefer Chatter podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be joined once again by R Moshe Flohr, who I think this is the 3rd time, previously was on the podcast discussing his new edition of Bikuri Yaakov from the Aruch Ner and Hilchos Sukkah, as well as his Sefer on Mechiras Chametz. And this time we're going to be discussing a new project that he is in the middle of, which is called Siddur Otzar HaTefillos, the famous Siddur Otzar HaTefillos, 2 volumes. For those that are familiar, and if you're not familiar, we're going to be talking about what the Otzar HaTefillos is and was, and what the new project is. So we're discussing this now because R Moshe is in the middle of this project, and because of that, he has just printed a new. It's like a dugma, but it's standalone. It's from part of the project. It's going to be a paperback. It is on Ashamnu, Chait, Avinu Malkeinu, with all the commentaries, with notes from the manuscripts, and many additions, and we're going to get into that. So thank you, R Moshe, for joining me once again.
Thank you, Nachi, for having me.
So let's start off right at the beginning. How did you become interested in Siddur Otzar HaTefillos? And then we'll talk about what the Siddur is.
Well, this story goes back many, many, many years ago when I was in high school. And I was interested in learning a little bit about davening in general and about the pirushim that are available. And I was told, well, if you want to know Pshat and davening, the best thing would be to start off is with Siddur Otzar HaTefillos. I wasn't too familiar with it. And I happened to come across it. Yeshiva was going shopping for Svarim in a place where they got Svarim. And I was there, and they happened to have a small pocket size, really, really small edition of it, 2 volumes, which I bought. And I started using it. And really, I was really, from the beginning, really overwhelmed with how much information I got out of it. And it was really like you're learning how to daven or understanding davening straight from there. And if even Ad Hayom Hazeh, many years later, if you ask people, this is the Siddur you would go to first if you're looking for Pshat. I'm not talking about there's many other Siddurim and many other Svarim, but this would be the more, I would say, the beginning to get understandings of davening. And that really, anyone who uses it really sees how great it is. And that's how I started with it.
Yeah, so we should talk about the Siddur Otzar HaTefillos. Like you said, it's a real classic, 2 volumes. I don't even know if it's in print right now. I didn't check that before we did this. It goes in and out. For some reason, it's not really around so much anymore. But regardless, originally it was printed in Vilna in 1915. That was the first edition. Then there was a second edition. I believe I'll let you talk about when the second edition came out. I'm not finding that right now. And then this facsimile, what's been going around for years, is just a facsimile, the 2 volumes, a junky binding, it's a good binding, it's bad binding, whatever. It's just that same old, it's an old print, a hard font, it's hard to read. But let's talk about the Siddur. Who printed it? What's included in it? Why was it printed? Let's give a history of this.
The Siddur Otzar HaTefillos was originally printed approximately either 1914. I believe there were two editions, one after the other, 1914 and 1915. The only difference, as far as I could see, between the two editions, the first one was an Ashkenaz Siddur, and the second one was the same Pirushim on the bottom, no changes, but the Nusach on top was Sfard. After that, it was printed again in 1923. Most people aren't aware of that edition. And then finally, the last edition, the last time it was printed was 1928. So we're not talking about a Siddur that's hundreds and hundreds of years old, but the way the Siddur was put together took many, many, many years till it finally came out. But again, the beginning of the Siddur, and when it first came out, and everyone who was it was made a big roshim when it came out, that started originally in 1914. There might be some shinuyim, not anything that I could tell is significant. Some places they changed when it's a Nusach Svard one. So even in the Pirushim, he's quoting part of the Siddur. They sort of change it to the Svard Nusach, but nothing about the Pirush itself. So, if you're going to say part of davening, that's dafka and ash, they have to move it around a little bit. But as far as the actual Pirushim, they didn't write it as a Svard Pirush. So they wrote it on a Ashkenaz Siddur. So again, 1914, 1915 was the first printing of the Siddur. Now, the people who printed it, this was printed by the famous R Publishing Company. The R Publishing Company is one of the most fascinating publishing houses that were around or ever were around. Began in 1798 or 1799, and it existed all the way till about 1940. That's a long time. Now, it was started by or controlled most of the time by the family Rum. After about 1912 or 1913, the family had to give up the business. It was losing money, and Baron Ginsburg gave money to keep it going because it was so important for everybody to have Svarim printed. So he kept it going for a while, but he passed away. And then some other people tried to, people who were Askonim wanted to keep it going, even if it lost money. But in the end, around 1928, they were having trouble already, and somehow it kept on going. But it was already, after the 1910s, after that, it wasn't such a good business going on, though they did print original Svarim, which we see they did the Otzar HaTefillos, but that was because it was being a project that they had started about 25 years earlier, and it was basically almost all done by the time, let's say, Baron Ginsburg took over. So they printed a Siddur. I don't know if they made money on it, but that's where the whoever was doing the publishing then, which was called Rum Publishing, they decided that it's got to be put out, and they put it out at that time. But they weren't. It wasn't their idea to do the Siddur. It was brought to them by somebody else.
Now, let's talk about the Siddur, the characteristics of the Siddur. What is included in the Siddur? The main part of the Siddur is the Mefarshim in here. So what other aspect? You can talk about other parts as well, but what's included in the Siddur?
So the Siddur is meant to be, if you look at it, 2 volumes. It's meant to be a Siddur that someone would have in his house that would cover everything he would need other than a Chumash. In other words, you have the Siddur, you have Mefarshim, you have Halachas. You have, for all the Yom Tovim, you have a Haggadah inside it, you have a Pirkei Avos inside it, all this with Perushim. And the halachas weren't just like, what do you do if you skip Merdat Tol or Mashav Ruach? It included all dinim, whether it's about Tefillin or it's about Shemon Esrei or about Shabbos, or most of the halachas that a regular person would need to know. I mean, it wasn't a Shulchan Aruch, but in order to keep things in that way, where you had these 2 volumes and everything you would think of in during the year, you would be able to use this. I guess if you bought a chumash, you would have anything you needed. That was like an encyclopedia for all things that you would need in a Jewish home. You could daven, you could daven the Yom Naram, you could daven Yom Tiv, everything was in there. Shabbos davening, everything was in there. Kriyas HaTorah for Mincha Monday and Thursdays. I don't know if there was a Tillim in there, but it was basically set up as that way. And then the Pirushim were put in because, a regular Siddur needed to have a little more than just that to get people to buy it. So they decided on putting in Mefarshim, and who decided it and which Mefarshim to go in, that was somebody else's decision, but that was their idea when they printed the Siddur.
Okay, so what Mefarshim are included?
So this is the way it is. If you look in the Sharblat of the Otzar HaTefillos, so you'll notice there a list of all different things that they were moisif, the new things that were never there before, and the Siddur itself consists of mainly 6 pirushim from 3 machabrim. So it works like this. The most famous of the pirushim is the pirush called the Eitz Yosef, and the second part of that pirush would be called the Anaf Yosef. This was a pirush that was written by Reb Zundel Chanoich Zundel from Bialystok, and his pirush, he wrote many mefarshim, many svarim that were called with this name. He wrote on Medrash Rabbah, he wrote on Mishnayos. He has on a lot of stuff where it's called 2 parts to it. One would be called Eitz Yosef, which was more straight pshat, and Anaf Yosef, which was like about the inyan itself that's going on, not just on the words themselves. He would just discuss like a general sort of like Metzudas David and Metzudas Tzion, where one is just saying the words and explaining the words itself, and then the sugya is in the other one. So this is how he wrote his other svarim. The interesting thing about this pirush, that the Mechaber who wrote this pirush, he was nifter in Tov Reish Chof Gimel. That's 1863. The Siddur was printed in 1914. It's about 50 years later. So he never gave it to publish. And also in his notes that he wrote, he did not, at the time when he wrote it, divide it up into Eitz Yosef and Anaf Yosef like he did himself with those svarim that he did, where he himself was deciding Eitz Yosef, Anaf Yosef. Over here, I'll tell you about the story behind the pirush. And over here, there was his pirushim were written down in some notebooks and given over or bought from the family by someone who brought it to the Rum publishing house to be used for the Otzar HaTefillos. The other pirushim in the Siddur, you have a pirush called Dover Shalom, and there's a separate part which sometimes shows up. It's called Achris L'Shalom. That pirush was written by Rabbi Eliyahu Landau, Yitzchak Eliyahu Landau, who was a dayan in Vilna and also the Magid Mesharim in Vilna. And his pirush is not that he also, it was written as a separate Siddur, a Siddur called Siddur Dover Shalom. Siddur Dover Shalom was also published around 50 years before the Otzar HaTefillos came out. And the Rum Publishing, they were in Vilna, so they wanted some other pirush besides the Eitz Yosef pirush. So they took out parts of the Dover Shalom. So let's say about 25-30% of the Dover Shalom, they just picked out pieces that they liked. They had editors and big Talmidei Chacham working for them. And when they wanted to find pirushim, they said, okay, we'll use this Siddur, find stuff that would be nice and put it in. The Achos L'Shalom part, that was a ksav yad that they got from I guess, the family of the Mechaber of the Dover Shalom, Rabbi Yitzchak Eliyahu Landau. So that would make up the other 2 pirushim. And the final 2 pirushim, one was called Iyun Tefillah, and one is called Tikkun Tefillah. That was written by Reb Aryeh Leib Gordon. Now, Reb Aryeh Leib Gordon, he's really the one who was behind publishing or getting this project done. It was his idea. He was the one who got the Ksav Yad from the family of the Eitz family, and he was working part of the time then with the Rum publishing, and he like sort of put everything together for them and said, okay, we'll use this. There was what other things he decided how it should be put together. But in the end he wasn't there day to day. He would come in here and there, and then eventually he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and in fact he was nifter a year or two before the Siddur even came out. So this is the second two Pirushim that we have. Those are the prominent Pirushim. The two from the Eitz Yosef Anaf Yosef, the two from Rabbi Yisrael Landau, the Dover Shalom and the Achaz Shalom, and the two from Rav Gordon, which was called Iyun Tefillah and Tikkun Tefillah. Iyun Tefillah is a name for a lot of Svarim on Tefillah. There's a famous Iyun Tefillah from the Baal Ksav HaKabbalah, Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg. But he also called it Iyun Tefillah, and the Tikkun Tefillah is his other part of the Pirush. I mean, they don't relate to each other. There's just a separate thing that he calls it, and it focuses on different things as compared to the other Pirush on the page.
So, right, the Tikkun Tefillah is more on the Nusach, the Iyun Tefillah is on Biyurim. He also has the Makairis, he brought it down, he wrote the Mavoi, the introduction, he has Haaris, and as you say, at the end of his section, it says, Kol Eilu Chubru, Yachtav, Aydei Rav Agoyin HaMuvak HaChacham HaMedaktik, Mar, Elio, Leib, Ibn. It's funny, they put it like with a nun. Ibn Shlomo Gordon B'Yerushalayim, Zal B'Yerushalayim Toivav. Then it says, Kishmoyne Esher Shana 18 years, Joshua Oitzres, Ginzei Asvarim, V'Hamecheker, Livcher, V'Liver, Mishufri, the Shufri, the best parts, to work through and find the best parts of Behenes, Kol Inyonim Anal, V'Yomat Tatzmisam, Kidvay Rezu, Shemoitzes Mitzah, Prochim, Apoletz Dvaisim, V'Yotzres, HaSiddur HaNiflazan. He put together this Siddur. That's what it says here. So, also, there are additional things as well, which they mention here on the next page. I'll just mention them. Burim Pratiyim L'Chalakim Shainim Shal Siddur. Some of the stuff we're familiar with. Rashi on Tfilos Rosh Hashanah, and Ne'ilah, and Eshanis. There's parts from the Kolboy, they put the Goyin on Pirkei Avos. On the Haggadah, they put the Maisinism of the Nesivos, Riakim Elisa. There's other parts, various Biurim to different Piyutim they got. They have other different things. They have Dinim, like you said, Halachas. Derechayim from the Nesivos, also Riakim Elisa, famously Hagoyis Rikreger Miksav Yad on the Derechayim. A couple various other things that are included here as well. There's a lot of different things and various assorted extra things all over that they included as well. In the beginning, they have a Toldos HaSiddur, and then they go through a Hakdama. Also, you mentioned the Dover Shalom, a separate Siddur. I think about 3 years ago, it was done now, completely redone, the entire Siddur Dover Shalom. There's a new edition of.
Yeah, the new edition of the Dover Shalom, it came out. There was someone who was in Lakewood when he was a bacher. He got very interested in it, and he started doing some work on it. And in fact, for his chasana, they gave out, I think, a bencher, and he ended up moving to Eretz Yisrael, and he put together the new edition, beautiful edition. I found it interesting. He didn't want to print it separately as a Dover Shalom and Achaz Shalom. He put everything into one, but he put it like a little diamond next to the Achaz Shalom. It's hard to tell, and I can't really verify that he did it that way correctly. But he seems to say that he wanted to put it like in just one straight thing. So you shouldn't like look at. I don't know why it's better that way, but he put it that way. The Dover Shalom looks to you as only one pirish. There is in there parts that are really from the Achaz Shalom. Seems also to indicate, I don't know if he has it, couldn't figure out from the Hakdam of that Siddur Dover Shalom, that there was more of Achaz Shalom that was never published, and it was a Ksav Yad. I saw letters written between the Mechaber, I guess Reb Landau, and someone else, and he told him he has like 90 pages written in a notebook that's Haisafis to his Siddur. I don't know if anyone really ever found it or has it. In the manuscript library in Eretz Yisrael, I don't seem to find it. So, it would be nice if that was also something that was done in the Siddur Dover Shalom, but, that's how they redid it over there. They just took the old Siddur, very hard to read, very bad print, made a beautiful, beautiful, big Siddur, 600-700 pages, big size Siddur. Really, really nice and very, very geschmack to learn that Siddur. But again, in the Otzar HaTefillos, they weren't going to print over the David Shalom Siddur. They took out what they thought were nice and interesting and geschmack shtiklach, because the David Shalom is really part drush, part pshat, and part of it is even in Kabbalah in Yonim. So they're probably looking more to focus on pshat in Yonim when they did the Otzar HaTefillos, and they took the David Shalom shtiklach. Mostly for let's say 80-90% of it is like that pshat stuff. There are some drush things also. I don't think too much anything of Kabbalah is in there, but that's the siddur that they were using in order to put in whatever. So it's really excerpts, tamta things. They didn't change the lashon, but that's where they got. That was the source of the David Shalom when they put it in.
So you also mentioned the Eitz Yosef and Anaf Yosef from Reb Chanech Zundel of Bialystok, and he's famous for his commentary on, you mentioned Medrash, Mishnayos, also in Yaakov. He has an in Yaakov.
Yes, in Yaakov, definitely.
That's a very famous, very important commentary. Now, this Siddur, as they write here on the Sharblat of Otzar HaTefillos, Shnei Siddurim Kisvei Yad, Aleph Arugos Haboysim, Beis Roshei Besamim. And we should note that recently, it was put out originally for Simcha, and now it came out in 2 volumes. It's available, called Siddur Arugos Haboysim. But I'll let you talk about the manuscripts, because there are different manuscripts here, and what they used. And now, first of all, so that's been redone in a new edition, but that is only the Arugos Haboysim. It's only the Eitz Anaf Yosef. It's not the Otzar HaTefillos. But you can speak about that and the different manuscripts there are.
Yeah, so I want to go back first to the beginning. As I mentioned, I was very, very happy when I discovered the Otzar HaTefillos in the beginning, as I say, many years ago when I was still just in high school. And, I've done other things, and I wasn't focusing on the Siddur Otzar HaTefillos. I had it. I would look into it. When we had COVID, this was where things were really getting started. Maybe a little bit before, but around that time, I got very we're locked out of shul, and it bothered me a lot about why we're suffering like this, that even the shuls we couldn't go daven, we had to daven b'yechidus, or it's very hard to find a proper minyan if you wanted one. And that's when I said to myself, maybe we need to be mechazik ourselves a little bit in the davening. And for me, chizik would mean to understand davening more. So I started to pull out my Otzar HaTefillos little 2-volume set that I had. And I said to myself, it's hard to read. Very hard to read this siddur. Very bad print. Why can't we find a new print? And no new print. I'm getting to the point in a second. So I said to myself, I'll just type it up so I'll have it for myself. That's how a lot of my projects start. I'm doing it for myself. And when I started doing it, I started with Shemon Esrei and other things, and I came for Shabbos to Tom's River. And you, as a neighbor of my son, asked me, so what are you doing? What are you working on now? You knew Svarim, and So I said to you, I'm going to be doing Otzar HaTefillos. I think people will enjoy it. I just make it easier to read, and that'll be enough. If they had it easier to read, I think more people would use it. And nobody's interested in opening an old Sefer these days. And it's not an old Sefer, but it's an old print, bad print, terrible. Tiny, tiny letters, even in the bigger size, in the regular size, tiny, tiny letters, really broken letters. The photocopy of it, of being redone so many times, was terrible. And you said to me, I know someone who said he has a ksav yad, of the mechaber of the Eitz Yosef and Anaf Yosef. I said to you, really? A ksav yad? Huh. And I said to myself, if that guy has a ksav yad, I should get it. And that's how things started. I figured out, and somehow I got a hold of both ksav yads. I don't know how. I mean, I do know how. I spoke to one person, and another person, he got me in touch with another person, and then I paid someone to make me a copy. I have the copies, and I'm sitting with the ksav yad, and I'm looking at it, and I see, something? There's a lot of stuff that was left out. I would say 20 or 30% of the Pirish of the Eitz Yosef. This is a ksav yad just from the Eitz Yosef, Anaf Yosef, and there were 2 ksav yads, right? Like it says on the Sharblat of the Siddur. Ksav yad number 1, Arugos Haboysim. Ksav yad number 2, Besamim Roish. Same author, 2 different names. interesting to me. Why does he have two different names? And I noticed inside that a lot of the stuff is the same, but there were pirushim that were in Arugas Abaysim that was not in some Reish, not in Arugas Abaysim. Now, even when you look in the Siddur Otzar HaTefillos that was printed, besides the Eitz Yosef and Anav Yosef, there are on top certain sections that he has the name Arugas Abaysim, and other sections that he says Anav, some Reish, mostly halacha dike inyanim or background about the pirish, not really pirish itself. It's more like, why do we say this tefillah and why do we say that tefillah? And he has it separate, or the publisher has separated it with the titles Arugas Habaysim or B'Samim Reish. And now, when you tell me about this new Siddur, so the person who published it has these two Kisvei Yadis, like I have, and he might even have originals. I'm not sure. And he gave it out by Simcha. And what he did was, he decided he's just going to print what's in the Ksav Yad. He's going to give it over to someone to work it over, and they did. And what they did was, they gave it one name, so they didn't call it Arugas Habaysim on the Shabbat. He shows you Arugas Habaysim, some Reish, but he called it Siddur Arugas Habaysim, and he just had the people who worked in it retype over whatever was in the Ksav Yad, whatever was there. So as it is, whatever was in there, that's what they published. Nothing else, not David Shalom, not even Tefillah, none of the other things that are in the regular Otzar HaTefillos. He was just interested in doing over whatever the author of Eitz Yosef, or Chanech Zundel, just what he had in that. He wrote these both notebooks, these both Kisvei Yadis, and these were the notebooks that were given over to the Rum publishers to use when they were doing the Otzar HaTefillos Siddur. But the interesting point that I found, which I don't know, when he published the Arugas Habaysim Siddur, he seems to have not thought about this, or he didn't care about it. There is a Pirushim that are in the Siddur that are not to be found, not in either one of the Ksav Yad. In other words, under the title Eitz Yosef Anav Yosef, you should be able to find everything in the Ksav Yad, because that's what they use. But yet, for some reason, there's a significant amount of Pirushim that are listed under this name, and you don't see it in either of these Ksav Yads. I mean, it's hard to read the Ksav Yad. I read through it very hard. I make sure that I try not to miss anything, even though some parts of the Ksav Yad are very badly damaged. And there are tricks in order to figure out what he's writing, because he might start quoting something, and when you find who he's quoting, you can fill in the part that's very hard to read, etc. But that's among the problems using the Ksav Yad. But then the end is, I felt it was missing from the Pirish if you don't go back into the Siddur itself and find what he left out when he published this Siddur Arugas Habaysim, because it's not the complete Pirish of the Eitz Yosef, since some of it is still in the Siddur that he doesn't pay attention to.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that when you went to Avrami's house. Well, we have to now that I said Avrami, I have to mention the gallery collection. Right, I have to mention. But anyways, when I was in Tom's River, yes, I guess once you mentioned it, I'll mention on the podcast. I don't usually say a lot on the podcast, but now being a former Tom's River Balabas, formerly of Tom's River, New Jersey, now of
right,
Lakewood.
formerly,
yes, now of Lakewood. But anyways,
yeah, you're one of the people. Most people, they're moving from Lakewood to Tom's River. You're one of the people who moved from Tom's River to Lakewood.
Yeah, not sure how many, but back to Lakewood. Anyways, but so that's what happened. So this now, Arugas Habaysim, I think that was when I had the first volume. I think this is what happened, if I remember correctly. But anyways, that was the first volume. Now, then they put out a second. Maybe it wasn't even out then, I don't remember. But then there's a second volume.
It wasn't out yet. No, it wasn't out yet. It came out. The first volume came out in the summer of Tafshin Pei Aleph.
I think I knew about it because they had published little small parts of it. I knew about. Okay, I know how I knew about it. Yes. So then they had published other things on very smaller volumes, like extras.
Yeah, on Yom Kippur Cotton.
On Yom Kippur Cotton, and I think Friday night, a couple of Shabbos maybe.
Yeah, but that was he didn't have the Ksav Yad, or I don't think so. I think it was just maybe he did have it. I'm not sure, but But his purpose was, what happened was, he found a small thing of the Eitz Yosef that was on Yom Kippur cotton. It was called Eilis HaChodesh. He asked Reb Chaim Kanevsky about it. He told him, yeah, you should print it, and he did that. Then he got a hold of this Ksaviyat, and he decided, well, nobody has what's in there. Let me put it out that way. And it took a while because it's a Ksaviyat is under, it took a long time to get it deciphered. It's not an easy Ksaviyat. I mean, it's a nice handwriting, but the Ksaviyat is already went through a lot. It survived the war. And all the things that were till you dug it out until he got a hold of the. I think he has one of the originals. I'm not sure. I think he has the originals. But in any case, until you get a hold of the Ksaviyat and until you decipher it and put it all together, it was an avodah for him to do what he did. I think I did a little more extensive work, but that's his Sefer was very nice. I don't use it for what I'm doing basically because I'm using the Ksaviyat itself to see what I find there. His stuff was it went up to a certain point. I hope I did a little more work with it, and it was myself whatever I thought needed to be over there as far as Viduy and things like that I worked on, to get it more of a user friendly, in my opinion, to get it to be as part of the Siddur Otzar HaTefillos itself, not just the Pirush of the Eitz Yosef.
Right, exactly, and that's what that Siddur is. It's just, we should make mention of it because it came out and it's available now. Now it's available in stores in 2 volumes. I think it's like $60-some, not cheap. Okay, now let's go to your edition. So you mentioned you wanted to redo it, wanted to make it nice, which anyone that's familiar with Otzar HaTefillos, and again, it comes in and out of prints. I'm not even sure it's available right now, but it's small. It's those old Rashi prints and that very black on white. It's some of the letters are broken because it's a facsimile edition. It's cracked the letters. They're very, very small font, etc. So it really just from that, it has to be redone. Besides for the fact that now you've added things, you've added notes, you've used the manuscripts, you've reformatted things. Talk about what you decided to do once you decided it needed to be done, and what you decided to do.
When you look at the Siddur, it's very crowded on the page. I wanted to obviously make it more readable, so I assumed that for people it'd be easier if I use square print and not Rashi print. I mean, that's obvious. I also read through what the Mechaber, the Eitz Yosef, had written in as a Hakdama. He wrote that he used as a source approximately 200 Mefarshim, and for the most part, he doesn't tell you who the Pirush is. Sometimes he does. He'll write Abu Dram. Sometimes he'll write Yavit, sometimes he'll write Gra, but most of the time he's not telling you where it's from. And if he's using as that he didn't write anything of his own, basically, it's just as a collecting from other Mefarshim. You have to figure out that it would make a difference to people, in my opinion, if I tell you that, say, the Pirush was from somebody who lived 100 years ago, and if it's somebody that was written maybe 300-400 years ago. He has a wealth of sources that he uses, a wealth of svarim. Most of them you do know about, but many are very obscure svarim that you never ever heard of. Mechabrim, you don't know who they are, and it's helpful when you go back to the Sefer, if you can find it. It would be helpful to look how they wrote it, because sometimes he just takes it out of a drush of something else and he applies it to the Siddur, to whatever. He might take something out of a Prima Godim, he might take something out of a Lavush, or sometimes from a Sefer that was written on a specific topic, maybe a Sefer that was written just on Baruch Shamar. And he happens to know about it, and he brings you down what they write, so that you would have it rather than having to find that Sefer. I found it very important, number one, to find the source, so that is it Avu Dram? Is it someone else's Pirush? Is it a Rekeach? Is it a Shalah? Or is it something that you don't even know about? And I would find that, and sometimes when I look back in the original, I would find that either either he might have misquoted it, or he might have been quoting it from someone else who quoted it. In other words, you find a pirish, and you'll say, "Oh, that's the shalah," but it could be that he wasn't quoting the shalah. It could be he found it in the Chayadim quoting the shalah, and therefore there are changes. It's not exactly like that, and I make note of it so that you know that. Also, he didn't write. He wrote different Chazal, so and so. He didn't tell you which Chazal. Is it a Gemara? Is it a Medrash? He didn't tell you any of that, which I think sometimes helps clarify what he's trying to say. So it was a big avodah for me to A, find the source, and B, look up the source. Now, sometimes he even made mistakes in the Ksav Yad. He quotes one time, example, something very recently. He quotes, "Ukemay shekasav b'haflo." First, you have to find where this haflo is. And when you find it, he brings it down, right, where he wrote it. But he seemed to have skipped some parts of it. A couple of lines here, a few words there. Till I found out where the hafla was. It was the Hakdama. And then when you find it, you see that, it would be a little more clear. I mean, it is clear, but it would be much more clear if you had the full amount. So I make notes about it, and I put in either, if I have room on the footnote, it's not that much, I'll tell you I'm missing some words here. I also made a section by me in the Siddur called Haisafis Biyurim V'Haisafis, where I'll tell you maybe explanation of what he's trying to say, or I'll bring you the full thing that he quoted and didn't bring all of it, and it'll help you understand it. So all these things are part of my avodah when I write over, and I check the Ksav Yad, because sometimes the matfisim skipped a line or two, not a few words, or they skipped the whole section. And when you put everything together, it's not only gives you more understanding, it's like a hashlama to the whole pirish. So for the most part, the Eitz Yosef is a beautiful pirish, but because it doesn't have all the Maramekaimis, and it doesn't have all the words that he was, of the original source, or sometimes a misquote. For example, he brings down a Rabbeinu Yaina, and he quotes a Rabbeinu Yaina, and he tells you Kamosha Mivurba Rabbeinu Yaina, and you assume he's quoting Pirish of the Talmid Rabbeinu Yaina in Brachas, and Lemaisa, that's not where he got it from. He got it from the Pirish of the Beis Yosef, who's quoting that Rabbeinu Yaina. There's slight differences, but sometimes significant enough to make it a little more clear if you go back to the original source. So that's part of my work when I use the Ksav Yad, to make sure that whatever I could give you more in a way of expanding what he's trying to say, you'll understand the kavanah of the pirish when you see it in the full words of the mechaber of the original source, because it's again the Eitz Yosef is not writing his own; he was writing what other Sfarim are writing. So you have to look at it as a whole to get the full picture of the Eitz Yosef. That's just that part of the pirish that's in the Otzar HaTefillos that I'm working on. Besides, the other Mefarshim also have their own issues that you have to work on.
So, and you put together one section, Makairis Tzionim V'Ha'aris, and you bring some of this down. So, as you said, you work on the manuscript, looking for sources. You have comments. You try to mention, like you said, there's proper sourcing for things, manuscripts, etc. And these are a bunch of Mefarshim, Eitz Yosef, the Anaf Yosef. Now, on the page, you also have Ian Tefillah and Dover Shalom. Did you make any changes to the formatting? As you said, the original one was a little bit too tight, a little cramped. Did you move anything to the back, move anything around?
Yeah, so the Ian Tefillah, the Dover Shalom and the Achas Shalom, again, I'm not writing over the Siddur. We're not trying to combine another Siddur in a Siddur. That has been done over now nicely. But if you look back, you'll see in the quotes that he's bringing down, and when the publishers put in the Dover Shalom, they also might have missed a few words here or there. I make sure to check whatever is in the Dover Shalom that was the original Dover Shalom. I do use the Dover Shalom that was published to see, how they, if they've discovered anything from, they probably have the original source maybe, or the Achas Shalom that has more. So I try to use that a little bit to help me out. But otherwise, I'm just checking to see that there's nothing skipped over. A new print, a nicer print. In general, this is in general. I'm not talking about the current publishing of the Viduy with the Avinu Malkeinu part. I'm talking about in general what I'm using the Siddur as a klal. I'm not going to be doing anything to add on or anything like that, other than to clarify, make sure any Rosh Hashanah, make them clearer, things like that, sources and things like that you should have the full source. The Iyun Tefillah and the Tikkun Tefillah. So the Iyun Tefillah, I don't have, it seems like there were notes and things like that were left over, but I don't have anything yet from that. I'm hoping to find, maybe. I have suspicions that there are notes that were left over, but I'm only able to come up with the name of his granddaughter. It would be hard for me to, and she passed away, so I don't know yet if there's anyone in the family that would have any notes that were left over. But the Tikkun Tefillah, which was on the page of the Otzar HaTefillos, that is almost completely concerned with the nusach of Tefillah. Different nuschayos, whether it's the nusach of the Machzor Vitri, nusach of Rav Amram Goyen, of Rav Sadia Goyen, nusach of the Rambam. He has and a little bit of the Teimani nusach of the Sfardim, and he tries to compare it to the nusach that we are using, which is, in his case, the nusach Ashkenaz. And he just says, well, in this part of davening, we have the following, but others, and he starts listing off. If you go to this nusach, you have the following. So I felt I wanted to have more room to make a bigger print and space out things. If I would be putting all that back on the page, including the Tikkun Tefillah, it would be impossible. Especially that I have a lot of things to add from the Ksav Yad of the Eitz Yosef and Anaf Yosef. There's a lot of things to add. So once you start adding in stuff, and then you want to have some words of the Siddur on the page too. You don't want to just have straight Mefarshim and no Siddur. You would try. It's a balancing act. You have to have Siddur. Obviously not that much Siddur, but because you have Pirushim, but you don't want to just make it just Pirush straight for 10 pages. So in order to accommodate all this, and also to make it better Tikkun Tefillah, I took out the Tikkun Tefillah from the page, because I felt like Pirush of Tefillah is more of the people that are using the Siddur, and I said I'll put the Tikkun Tefillah expanded, updated with new sources as a separate part of the Siddur later, and this way I give myself more room to use the new stuff from the Ksav Yad, make it clearer, have room for footnotes, and the Tikkun Tefillah will also be better off, because this way I can be moisef without having to worry about how it relates to the Siddur on top. Just moisef other nuschayos and other new discoveries that were not around when the Siddur Otzar HaTefillos was being put together. They had their things, but in the last 50, 100 years, we've come across many things, whether it's from the Gniza, whether from other parts, which really, I'm not going to just take out fragments, but let's say we have a complete discovery of another Neschayos, because he quotes Machzor Raima, Mach Menikapa, and other things like that, Romanische Nusach, all these things which were not so well known. He had some Ksav Yad, some things, but it was a small amount of things that he used. But it wouldn't be the full picture that you would like to have if you're interested in that. And also, again, you want to be able to expand the Pirushim directly related to Pshat, which is very, very, very important and very sorely lacking for people, because if you think about it, which Svarim, if I tell you I want to look for a Pirush on davening, where would you tell me to go? You would say, well, there's the Pirush of Rav Yaakov Emden. Now, Rav Yaakov Emden's Pirush, for the most part, is not Pshat. It's Drush, it has some Kabbalistic things and things like that. There is some Pirush on Pshat there too. Now you could say you can go to the Siddur of the Vilna Gaon that was put out, the Ishi Yisrael. Again, you have one or two Pirushim there. It doesn't have a lot. It has a lot, but there is more to know about in Pshat. So you're basically left with Siddur Otzar HaTefillos, and Otzar HaTefillos is a very good source for Pshat, and for the most part, I would say for 95% of the people, that's the place they should go to first, because it's very, very well done. and with anything that could be added to that part of the davening, the pshat part, I thought that's the most important area to focus on. And those who need nusach, we're not leaving it out. I didn't take it out and totally. I put it there, and I made hisafis, tikkunim, mar mekaimes, all the things that I thought would be of help for those who focus on that, but it couldn't be put together with the pshat part.
Which I think is, makes sense. There are also Siddurim, there are Rishonim. Now you have the Teres Chaim Siddur from Masada of Kook, and you have the Tefillah Moshe that Baron Lopiansky compiled, but those are Rishonim. But the Otzar HaTefillos, like you said, really has a one-stop shop for everything pshat related. Now you have the Dover Shalom separately, or separately, but the Otzar HaTefillos is everything together, the Siddur, this massive Siddur that they worked on. So we'll talk, you mentioned what you're doing in your new edition with the notes and how you move things around. It's a beautiful new font. So especially that, that's Teres made Tshuva now, when this is coming out, Ashamnu, Chait, Avinu Malkeinu, this is what this is about. I think it's, important to give some examples from here for the listeners. I want to start off by mentioning one that's not from Ashamnu, not from this dugma that you're printing, but from something that I saw many years ago. I was in Philly, in Beis Medrash, and I remember seeing this from the Dover Shalom. It's Negeya, it's apropos. It's actually, he says it about Rosh Hashanah, but I want to say it here. He said that this is famous. I've never seen anyone else say it. I don't see any Siddur printed. I think I've talked to you about this. I'm sure you know. It says, Sefer Chayim Bracha V'Shalom Parnasa Toiv V'Nizachar V'Nikasev L'Fonecha Nachem Chlam Chavis Shalom Chayim Tov V'Shalom. Everyone sings it. Everyone says it like that. So Dover Shalom asks, L'Chayr Sefer HaMaimer L'Chayim Tov V'Shalom Yusur U'Kafel. It's double. Why are you saying two times the same thing? You're saying again L'Chayim Tov V'Shalom. So he says, "Shekvar Amar Betchilas HaMaimer Chayim Bracha V'Shalom U'Parnas HaToiv." You already say it. He says, "Be'emes." The truth is, Toyim Bazeh Kol Hamoyin HaMispalim. Everybody davening makes a mistake. But Amram Nizacher V'Nikasev L'Fanech. Everyone reads it. Nizacher V'Nikasev L'Fanech. That's what everyone reads it with a tune. He says it's a mistake. Rak Tzrichen LaHafsik Achemilach Nizacher. You have to make a hefsik. So you have to. In no Siddur has like that. I've seen. Sefer Chayim Bracha V'Shalom U'Parnas HaToiv Nizacher. Comma. Hard stop. Semicolon. Whatever. It's a new statement. He finishes off. There's two different things we're asking for in this passage. One is on the schira and one is on the ksiva. So we're asking Hashem for two different things. I thought it was a beautiful piece. I remember reading this. And I was in Philly. I went over to Shalom Kamenetsky, and I asked him this, and he told me, he shrugged it off, as far as I remember. But I did ask him this. But I've actually done this. The truth is, I do this since then. I read this, and it made sense to me what he's saying. I haven't seen anyone otherwise. But Lamaisi, you don't see any other person saying you don't see it in the Siddur. But it's an interesting thing from the Otzar HaTefillos, from the Dover Shalom.
So as far as that pirish that you just mentioned, in Sefer Chaim, which is not brought down in the Otzar HaTefillos by, let's say, in the Shemana Esrei of the Chayil, you would only find it, I believe, Mincha in the Shemana Esrei of Rosh Hashanah, which he mentions it over there. That parish was put in over there. When I discovered this parish, Baruch Shekivanti, I was overwhelmed with this great chap, or insightful. The kasha was phenomenal, and I loved the teretz. And at that time, when I found it, I would say somewhere in the last 15, 20 years, I had a computer. I typed it up, made little copies of this, and gave it out in the shul, in Kol Shimshin, hung it up on the bulletin board, and whoever I could grab and show them this, they weren't as excited as me for this. I was so excited. What a pshat. I have it in my machzer. I said, this is it's unbelievable. Nobody knows the pshat. You ask them the pshat, and it's a brilliant solution. You're missing a period over there. And anyway, doesn't, like you say, I don't see a lot of people doesn't bother them the problem, and therefore they're not looking for a solution, but really it should bother them, because when you daven, now that's regular pshat. Again, regular pshat. You should be happy to know pshat. You should want to know pshat. But for some reason, people have this idea that davening doesn't require pshat. Now, but that's really their problem. And when the Siddur will Hashem arrive, when I will finish the project, maybe we could give more of a reason for that necessity. But when it comes to Viduy, Al Chait, Avinu Malkeinu, Ashamnu, all these things, which is the part that I hope to Emir Hashem, which is now going to be available. I think that that's a really problem for people if you think that you can get away with Viduy and not know Pshat. Because one of the things we say in the Al Chait is Al Chait Shachatanu Beviduy Sefasayim. That is one of the early ones that we say. And, or, you have other Viduy Peh. Okay? I'm sorry, the Viduy, I made a mistake. Beviduy Peh. What do it mean Beviduy Peh? It means Viduy that you said just Menasaf Alachutz, and you either had no intention of really being Misvada, which requires Charata ala Avar, and the Kabbalah ala Asid, or even the fact that you said the Viduy without even knowing the Pshat of the Viduy. Because you might say davening will work even when you don't know what it means. I mean, we're talking about, let's say, Shemon Esrei, except for the Pshat, first pasuk in Kriya Shema, maybe the first bracha, you need at least kavana, and you would say kavana means pshat, and everything else you can get away with not knowing. But when it comes to Viduy requires an understanding of what you're trying to be misvada on for it to be called Viduy. Now, if you look in the Otzar HaTefillos, the Pirish of the Eitz Yosef, he does bring down the very famous Rambam, and which seems to be others who say this way, that the only thing that you need to say for Viduy to be the mitzvah of Viduy, which is, depending on who you hold like, it might be a deraisa, but whatever it is, all you got to say is Chatasi, Avisi, Pashati, or you say that Avla Anachnu Chatanu, we're not tzaddikim, we're not claiming to be tzaddikim, or you have to say Anachnu V'Abaseinu Chatanu, but everything else is not the part of the mitzvah. You were yaitza the mitzvah, so you could probably say, for that part I can have kavanah, and the rest of the Viduy, maybe I don't need kavanah. Maybe it's enough whatever I think it means, and that's it. But really, maybe you'll only get slicha and kapara for the Rambam and Shemayim, and maybe the other part of Shemayim holds the other shitas, that you really have to say a little more beprotius, because we know Ashamnu is sort of considered the kloliistic. Chait, you're getting already a little bit more. Chai Adam says, anything you know that you were over on, you have to be mafarid it, and you should try. And there's the Viduy Hagadol from Rabbeinu Nissim. All these things made me feel, not saying that in middle of Shemoneh Esrei you should spend an hour or 2 or 3 to say your Viduy, because you might need to prepare yourself a drop before. When? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work for you if you're going to start doing the saying of the Viduy. You might hop around here and there. So my feeling was, if I give you a nice pshat in Yonim and directly on the words, and you might find yourself during the 10 times that we have to say Viduy on Yontiv, on Yom Kippur, you're required to say that. You might say, I'll just focus on 5 of them on one part of Shemoneh Esrei. I have 10 of them. If you make a cheshbon, there are 10, and there's a reason for 10. The reason for the 10 is connected the 10 times that the Kohen Gadol said the Shem Hashem HaMefarish during the Avodah on Yom Kippur. And there's a shaila if you davening b'yechidus, if you have to say 10 or not. It's a langa arichas. I don't want to get into that. I do bring down a likutim of dinim and hanhagas of Avinu Malkeinu and of Viduy in the back of the new publication that I'm making. And over there, I do talk about the requirement of 10. And it seems, according to the way I understand it, it's only if you're going to be davening with a minyan. If you're davening b'yechidus, there's no pshat that you should say the 10. But in any case, you want to say it with kavanah. You have enough of the vidus that you'll be saying to split it up, find the pshatim that you could focus on, and say, this part I did kavanah over here with the pshat. The other ones I just said the translation that I see, my English translation that I have next to me, and the rest I'll try the next time, and maybe the next time, and maybe by the time Yom Kippur was over, by the time Ne'ilah, maybe I have enough of the combination, the all of them put together, that I have one Ashamnu and one Al Chait done with a kavanah, which is sort of the idea and sort of the requirement that I feel you will fulfill correctly if you were able to do that.
Okay. Now, what about, you said you went over, so you've corrected things in the text also. Do we
Even
see?
in the Ksav Yad, there are mamish mistakes. Even the Ksav Yad, whether it's a source, whether it's a misquote, a written wrong word, a missing word, you have to take the Ksav Yad. That's as far as the Eitz of Yosef, which a lot of work went into that for what I had to do. You go back to the source, see if he has the correct quotes. Sometimes, as I say, he misquotes, leaves out words, leaves out lines. And the hard part is to find the source. There are svarim that we have never heard of it for 99% of the people. A sefer called Tekanta de Moshe, written by the son of Rav Moshe Berliner. I think his name was, I'm trying to remember his name, but it was written in Taf Kuf Chav Ches, published, has a haskama from the Shagazarye. A lot of stuff is in there. There's another sefer, which is quoted with the source, but you won't find the sefer. In the published Otzar HaTefillos and in the Ksav Yad, he writes a sefer. He's quoting, and it's a beautiful sefer. I mean, it's an old sefer. It's called Taharas, at least according to the way it's written, Taharas HaKodesh. Taharas HaKodesh, I don't remember the name of the author, but you can look from today till tomorrow, and you will not find this one that they're referring to under the name Taharas HaKodesh. It was bothering me very much because there's a lot of things that are quoted with the Taharas HaKodesh. Some things are quoted from him without his name being mentioned. Until I finally figured it out, it was not Taharas HaKodesh, it's Taharois HaKodesh. The missing vav is the clue that was missing to get to the right sefer, and then to find a clear enough sefer. It's a very bad print. And sometimes, it's not like people think, well, it's on the Eitzah Chachma. Yeah, there is. A Taharois HaKodesh, once you figure that out, you have to figure it out. You could search from today till tomorrow, von Heint bis Mittwoch, for the next 150 years. You will not find one word that you can search on that sefer. It's a terrible print. And the search can only search nice prints, recent prints of the hit and miss might come up with a word here and there, but it's not going to come up when you're looking for a pirish that was quoted in the Ksav Yad and you want to check it out. So what I had to do was I had to turn the pages one by one and scan quickly. It took me once 2.5 hours just to find one Maramokim of the Taharas HaKodesh. I, Baruch Hashem, found it, and it made a big difference. And also, as I go along, this is called Siyata Deshmaya, as I go along, I find Perushim that I was looking for that I didn't even know was there as I'm turning through. And I say, oh, that's that one. Okay, I got that one. That's another sefer. Now, the most amazing find of a Maramokim was when I'm looking for a sefer, he quotes a sefer, and he gives it a name. You wouldn't know why this is called this way. It's called Salma Mul Eder. Salma Mul Eder. It's quoting a pasuk in Micha. I believe Micha has pasuk Beis or something like that, which says Mul Salma Eder, which is about a clothing and a scarf, whatever it is. Though you would look for it. Now, I found the sefer, and it was hard to read, very, very bad to read, and very bad print, until I was able to find, interesting enough, you find a lot of history, a lot of famous people as you go along, a lot of amazing understanding of as I say, Yiddishkeit in the different tkufas when you try to learn Siddur a little bit. There's a pirish, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, there's a pirish on Tefillah written by the Baal Kitta Shulchan Aruch of Shlomo Gansfried. He didn't publish it with his name. I mean, his name is mentioned here and there with the Siddur. It was a Siddur Nohira or Nohira Shalom or something like that, with a pirish in it titled Pirish. And when you look through the Siddur, you find out that the Baal HaMachaba of that pirish was Reb Shlomo Gansfried. But it doesn't say the Baal Shlomo, it doesn't say anywhere. His name is there that he's interested in printing a Siddur, but Reb Shlomo Gansfried wrote this pirish, and he quotes the Salma Mul Eder, but a different name. I believe it was called Kasalma. And that was the pirish, which if you look in the Ksav Yad of the Eitz Yosef, he writes the name of the Pirish that he's quoting. Who am I quoting from? Salma Mul Eder. When you try to find it, you can't read it. It's missing. That page is hard to read. But when you see it, Shlomo Ganzfried, he gives it the name Kasalma because the Baal Mechaber Salma Mul Eder wasn't printed less than 200 years ago. Called Chelik Beis of his Sefer Kasalma. But the Baal Mechaber Eitz Yosef wasn't aware that the Chelik Beis, which is where he's calling the Pirish, is called the Kasalma. So Reb Shlomo Ganzfried is telling you, I got this Pirish from Kasalma. The Baal Eitz Yosef is telling you a quote of a Pirish called Salma Muleder. You want to look it up, you want to see what's missing? It's missing stuff in the Ksav Yad. He didn't quote it correctly. Reb Shlomo Ganzfried does quote it fully. And I put it in and add the extra stuff that Reb Shlomo Ganzfried brings it down, verified by how it was written in the second chelik of that Sefer.
So these corrections that you made, does that change the pshat? Essentially, is what you're saying?
If you're missing a word, here's a word. You're missing one word. The word was yoser. Another place, and that was in the Ksav Yad. You add that, and it makes a new difference in the understanding of the pshat. You find another place where the word was written in the published Maher. Now, when you look in the Ksav Yad, it was Mehem. The Resh was supposed to be an endemem. Maybe in the Ksav Yad it wasn't so clear. Maybe there are other things like that change it. They added words, the missing lines. When there's a Pirish that you have to figure out. He quotes a Goyen. You don't know which Goyen he's talking about till you figure out it's in Mishlei. The Ksav Yad tells you it's in Mishlei. In the printed one, they just wrote Gra. Which Gra? It's hard to figure out. But when you look at it, it's a phenomenal thing that you finally figure out which Gra. When you find that it's in Mishlei, you see that it was a little excerpt of the Mishlei. When you bring down the whole Pirish of the Gra on Mishlei for that shot, that he's like just pulling out an excerpt. He doesn't even give you the whole thing. He says, I'll pay this and this, and you don't know what it's talking about. You like say, okay, this I don't know. But it's such a phenomenal Pirish that is massive so much. I'm talking about on the Chait that he's quoting there. It's an incredible pshat that you will really say, wow, I would never have known this, right? You would never know it because you don't have it. You have a gra that you don't know about because the Pirish itself is sort of truncated. It's missing. Now that's as far as the Eitz Yosef. As I say again, the Iyun Tefillah is a very funny thing that he did. By the way, I want to mention something about the Mechaber of the Iyun Tefillah, who was really the whole idea of the entire construction of this Siddur. He was I wrote, by the way, I want to mention in the Siddur and in this Ashamnu and Chait and Avinu Malkeinu, I bring you the Toldos, a brief amount of Toldos of the authors, of the people behind the Siddur, the three main Perushim. And the one who was, as I say, this Yehuda Leib Gordon, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Rabbi Aryeh Leib Gordon. There's a very important point. You have to know about this. Rabbi Aryeh Leib Gordon, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Mordechai Yaffa, and Rabbi Mordechai Yaffa was a famous Rav in Europe in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s. He wrote certain Svarim, I'm trying to remember now, but it's like off the top of my head because I'm not looking at his Toldos, but he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and eventually Rabbi Aryeh Leib Gordon moved to Eretz Yisrael to be with him, and he moved to Petach Tikva. He was one of the first people to live there. And when they wanted to open up a school, a yeshiva, actually, for the people who had kids there who didn't have a yeshiva, who didn't have anything, they bought a beis chinuch. So they're teaching them everything, and the people want to teach in Ivrit and all these like mathematics, all in Hebrew. But as far as Yiddishkeit, Chumash, Halacha, Gemara, Tanakh, all these things that they weren't, it's not talking about we're in Yerushalayim, we're in Petach Tikva, and the first group of people living there. He was one of the first people to move there. It was a brand new kehillah, supposed to be for frommer people, and but the people weren't so like into it that he made a big effort. Askonim, they're going to make a yeshiva, and they had two people running it. One person was Rav Braverman, famous Rav Braverman. He was in charge of the overall, and for the Limudei Kodesh section, Rabbi Aryeh Leib Gordon was the one to take care of it. The curriculum and all the things that had to go behind it. Rabbi Aryeh Leib Gordon was an interesting person because he was involved with a lot of askanas in Europe till he got to Eretz Yisrael and got involved with the Petach Tikva. But he was a tremendous Baal Medaktik, tremendous. He knew from the biggest people in the world about Inyane of Diktuk and these type of things. So that's a separate thing. Now a lot of people are interested in Diktuk. That's why he was so makbid on Nusach, because of his focus on Diktuk. In fact, this is the amazing thing. There was a Ksav Yad left over from the Malbim that was not published, and they wanted to publish it. And they brought it to Rabbi Leib Gordon that he should figure out exactly the whole Nusach. It was called, I forgot the name of it already, something about Hegyon, Mushel, the Hegyon, I think it was called. It's in the Hakdama of the Heldus of the Mechaber. And they gave it to him to set it up. It's all about different Masholim, explanations. And Rabbi Leib Gordon was a real Ibegegeben to Torah and understanding Chazal. He's such haracha for all the different Chazal, for the Machabrim, for the Gedolim. He's such with great and tremendous hakara and covet for them, that when the Malbim brought a mashal that he felt was not so much the right way and it was too long, he substituted a different mashal. It was all about Mishalim, about Chazals. And he said in the Hakdama, I thought this might be misinterpreted by some people in not the correct Torah Hashkafa, and I replaced it with a much shorter and better understanding in this. He writes about it. He tells you where it was. He doesn't hide it. But his idea behind the amount of correctness that you have to have, whether it's in Diktuk, whether it's in Chazals, in the understanding, he goes a teeth in the correct mahalach. And people, I don't want to hide it, some people were against him. They felt he was a tziyoni because he went there to Yisrael. He was too much of Ryan, he wanted so much to promote that people should go there to Yisrael. But he was following his Rav, his Rebbe, Rav Yafa, and he felt that he belongs where his Rebbe is. He felt he must stay with his Rebbe, and he lived in Eretz Yisrael. He came back to Europe here and there, and he helped a little bit with the Siddur again. But again, he was very little involved because he had given them over all the things that they had to do. And because of that, he couldn't be aimed on it as a day-to-day basis. It was done primarily by the main editor, tremendous Talmud Chacham, Reb Shmuel Feigenson, known as Shafan HaSefer, from the Rum Publishers, who was in charge of publishing by them for 50, 60 years, except for a tkufa, about 5 years that he wasn't there. But other than that, he was the one behind the day-to-day setup. But the Reb Aryeh Leib Gordon was really the focus of the haschala of the whole idea. And interesting to note, Reb Aryeh Leib Gordon published Diktuk HaGra. He was a big chassid of the Torah of the Goyen, and he brought the Diktuk HaGra with tremendous amount of footnotes. Now, people bashmutzed him in a way that I thought was not becovered. They misunderstood who he was, and they mixed him up with a famous, terrible maskil by the name of Yehuda Leib Gordon. That's my opinion. Yehuda Leib Gordon was a terrible person. He was hated from a people. He would make fun of them, and he was a big Baal Medaktik. And I think that's part of the confusion. Gordon, Leib. He's Aryeh Leib, he's Yehuda Leib, and they're not related. They're not related, they have no shaykhs, and they're totally different people. And one is a person who was very much in support of everything in Chazal and everything else, and the other one's the opposite, and that sort of created, because when you come to the Siddur, you have to know, who am I using to learn my Siddur? And many Hasidic Rebbes were very much in favor of the Siddur Otzar HaTefillos of a tremendous amount, that in fact, the Amshan of a Rebbe, the first one, or early one, whenever that was, when it came out, only would use Siddur Otzar HaTefillos to daven from, and many other Hasidic Rebbes in general. So I want to say is that Siddur is a historic, tremendous accomplishment in all of the years that Siddurim were being published and being learned. It is one from the top Siddurim that person should be using.
Yeah, it's super important. And like I said, I don't know if it's even in print, but
there is available if you want Svard. If you want Ashkenaz, in other words, Svard meaning the Nusach on top will be Svard. The Pirish is the same.
Rest is the same, right? Yeah.
The Pirish is the same. So right now, as far as Ashamnu, Avinu Malkeinu, and Chait, there is no difference. However, there is a difference in the Seder of some of the Chaits, where in Nusach Ashkenaz or Svard, it might be reversed. And I do have note to tell you, like I'll use the Ashkenaz on top, let's say, and I'll tell you, I'll piece Nusach Svard, which means not Svardi, I'll piece Nusach Svard, it's reversed in about 7, 8 different places. One will say Beneshach V'Marb is first, or second, different things. Siach Sifsei Seinu this way or that way, which comes to Sikar Ayin, or Siach Sifsei Seinu, which one comes first. I follow the Pirushim of the Siddur, which were written for Ashkenaz. So them Sikur Ayin, and they're using this sin and Siach Sifsei Seinu again because there's no Samach Al Chait. So but in any case, Sikur is first, or if you're doing Svard, then Siach Sifsei Seinu is first. But I'll make a note. But that's the basic idea. The Siddur, if you gotta find some what they call Svarim in the used Svarim, you might come with the Ashkenaz and find it. Even in Eretz Yisrael, I don't think it's available. I think only the Svard has been printed, and I'm not sure if it's still. I know I've seen it in the stores. I've been in Judaica Plaza. I've been in a few places that they have a nice cover, but the inside is exactly the same as it was printed 80, 100 years ago.
Yeah, it is the same. But going back to Vari Leib Gordon, it was funny you mentioned, you said review Yehuda Leib Gordon first, you mentioned Yalag, Yehuda Leib Gordon, also from Vilna, so probably was some of the confusion. Okay, so now going back to this. Okay, so therefore yours now is available on Ashamnu, Chait, Avinu Malkeinu. So you can tell listeners where can listeners buy that volume now?
So that is going to be in the stores, I guess, right after Rosh Hashanah. Will be in Brooklyn in Bigel, and in Lakewood it will be in Judaica Plaza, and in Berman's by Squonkam, the Squonkam store, or by me at my home, or maybe in the Kol Shimshon Shul might be available. That's it. I don't have time because it's very late. I thought it would be out in the beginning of Elul, but due to technical difficulties, as they say, things were held up and it couldn't come out earlier. So it's a limited release for now. And Mitzvah Hashem, it'll be available. And Mitzvah Hashem, as we say, the Siddur is in the midst of being, from beginning to end, the full Siddur. Will be first the Chayil Siddur Chelik, which is like it was done in whatever Chelik Aleph, and the Chelik Beis for Shabbos and Yantiv will be subsequently.
Okay, yeah, so Otzar HaTefillos, as you're calling it, and so that volume will be available. I'll put your email in the show's notes that if anyone wants to contact you, if you're in Lakewood. Also, of course, I'll say this for you, if anybody wants to help support the project, funding, if anyone wants to sponsor any of it, should contact you, email you, or they can reach out to me. I can put them in contact with you. I have your number, I have your email, so I can get them in contact with you, so they can reach out to me or you. I'll put your email there if they would like to be part of this.
Yeah, this is not a small project. You're talking about the original was 1,500 pages, so it's a big siddur. And in order for me to get it done, and I have to hire people have to do work, whether it's the reading the Ksav Yad, researching the manuscript to make sure, setting the pages, and of course, any notes that I want to put in. All these things require many people, and it's a lot of money to do this. I could speed it up if it would be somehow sponsored in any way, whether a little bit, or if someone wants to have the major sponsorships, it's all available. It's a big schus, tremendous schus. You'll get people to really enjoy coming to shul to daven, really see the beauty of the davening, really find tremendous inspiration in whatever they say. It's not just going to be words. It'll be with a little bit of a emotion to them, and it'll get them incredible happiness when they daven. Incredible. When I daven now, it's a sort of difference between when I started really deep dive, not just here and there. For the last 3-4 years, it's going to be an amazing eye-opening experience for people.
We should also mention this dugma, this just, it's not a sample. That's all I make clear. It's almost 200 pages that you're publishing in paperback here, just as a little bit of a taste of what it's going to be, what the full work is going to be, and that you're hard to work on. So again, it'll be available, and if anyone wants to contact you, email. I'll put your email. They can email me as well if they're interested in helping out. And it's really chashuv a siddur, and it's something that, like you said, can really help you in your davening, whoever it is, and can help you understanding the tefillah and knowing what you're saying.
Well, it has sources. It gives you the background. It gives you the kavanas. I mean, we're not trying to talk about kabbalistically, pshatim. It has a little bit more sometimes, and I try to help you understand that as well. I don't just leave you hanging if he quotes a unknown kabbalistic work about it. I'll try to help you out, give you a little bit of an understanding to make it a little bit, not just that, I don't know what that is. If you think about it, you could get a pshat. And in general, it gives you an appreciation of and such an outstanding work. Tefillah is, as we know, as Reb Chatzkel said, the hardest Sefer from Chazal for someone to learn, and that's why people avoid it. And it's unfortunate, but when you have a Sefer that helps you do that, it's something that we should all want to learn, because it's an opportunity that should not be missed. And any time, not only Yom Kippur, not only Rosh Hashanah, any time during the year, davening will really, really be something meaningful to you and really help you accomplish what you're trying to do with your davening. You're going to daven anyway. You should at least have some benefit directly out of it, not just that you came to daven, said the words, and went home. It's got to make some of a difference in your life, daily life. This siddur would guaranteed help somebody to do that.
Okay, and so there's that, and hopefully this was interesting for listeners and can learn about the siddur if they didn't know it, if they were familiar with it. Now you get to hear more about it, more about your project, R Moshe, and if anyone wants to be involved, and again, they should reach out to you, reach out to myself, and everyone should have a Gemar Chasima Tova.
To everybody, thank you, Nachi, once again. I'm very happy you were able to arrange this, and Mr. Shem, we will see great things happening soon with this project.
Okay, R Moshe, Atzlacha.